All righty, well, welcome everybody. Let me call to order the Wednesday, September 18th meeting of the Town Council Study Committee. Let me read through the hybrid required readings here. Public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. We are using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will I'll make my best attempt to call on you as quickly as possible. And as with all these meetings, questions should be directed through the chair. Confirming member access as a preliminary matter. This is Joe Grouse, Chair of the Town Council Study Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jeff? Here. Bo? Here. Caroline? Here. I'm here. Here. Jill?
Here.
Curtis?
Yes.
Rachel?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Oh, that's something there. We have no members of town staff with us today. And so I think the anticipated speakers would be the folks from the Collins Center. So Anthony, just to get your aye.
Aye.
And Patricia?
Oh, aye.
Thank you. Let's see. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Town Council Study Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will allow public comment and questions if there are any. For this meeting, the Town Council Study Committee is convening in a hybrid basis via Zoom. As posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Over that. Okay. Finally, I think I'm just flipping out some of it, but each vote taking the meeting as we usually do will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay. Everybody got a copy of the meeting posting, I assume. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll go around the table. Actually, I think everybody's. I'm gonna say, we can do it, right? Donna is the only person who's.
She's not voting though.
Unfortunately, Donna's not voting. We can actually do away, I think, with the, so all in favor of the agenda, approving the agenda?
Aye.
Aye, great. The next matter of business is catching up to review and approve the minutes of August 7th, August 21st, and September 4th. And I sent everybody an email earlier today because I goofed and sent Maureen Coleman at the town a marked up red line version of the August 7th as opposed to the clean version. So has everybody had a chance to sort of read through and?
Yes, but there were two of the same. This is August 7th was sent twice.
Well, it should have been sent as a marked up copy and an unmarked up
It
copy.
looked like it was the same.
I have it with redlining here.
I apologize. No,
I got the clean copy, or whatever I'm calling the unread copy.
Sorry. Both mine are, they look the same.
there's no red. They both have red. They both have red marks on them.
Sometimes if I look at it on the
Mine
email
don't.
instead of a desktop, you don't see the red line.
That's what it is.
It's just a weird,
But I see that there,
that happens.
122 KV and 125.
Do we feel comfortable to okay the minutes in their final form. I did have actually two little typos, both that I was gonna hand to you, ask you to. What?
Come on, Bo.
Go Bo, go Bo.
All right. Any questions for Bo or issues about the minutes? No, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as corrected?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, great.
Clear that up.
I think being able to do it without that. Yeah, there's two little typos on that one. Okay. Got that. I feel much better now that we got that out of the way. Caroline and Jeff and I met with Anthony and I think it was Mel actually, a week ago Monday to kind of go over our discussion from the September 4th meeting, as well as to discuss the agenda for today. I think our general sense was, given the upcoming public forums on the 5th and 10th of October, that it would make some sense to really spend some good time this afternoon rather, talking about how do we want to approach these public forums, and I have some ideas, but I'm presuming some of you have some ideas too. So does anybody want to?
Well, I think obviously we're gonna start with your slideshow. You know, the visual that you've had. I mean, that just gives a framework to get going, then you can bounce off that. Because I don't think anyone else has a visual to project to get the meeting going. Bud?
Visuals are good.
I mean, I guess well, we can get into more of the detail, but I was thinking along the same lines, having a introductory, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes saying, here's who we are, here's what we've been doing, here's some of the things that we've decided upon or leaning towards, however you want to characterize it. Go through maybe 4 or 5 of the slides from the presentation that we've been using all summer long, and then really just open it up to whoever shows up. I mean, I have no idea, right? We have no idea whether we're gonna have a room full or whether we're gonna have 3 people, so open it up to people's questions and comments. And
Well, let me say that we did this for the town council or the town government study committee. And maybe we got 10 or 12 people. There were a couple of specific questions that Tucker Holland worked on, and we sort of tabulated the answers to that. It was, I don't know, we got a little chart, which I didn't understand, but you know, I think your whole point is we do the opening, open it to discussion, and maybe if some of us have points we want to emphasize in that answer, we can do it. There were like 12 to 15 people who came to the town government thing.
Is there anything we can do to get more people? Because obviously we want as many people as possible, because our outreach that we've identified, the Collins Center has encouraged us to think of as being key to our success. And you know,
Well, we're gonna get the current, I hope, and
well, I mean, Florencia Russo, the PR person for the town, has kind of taken I don't really want to call it the one pager sort of that describes the public forum. It's on our web page on the town's website. I think that, and I know we've chatted in a couple of these meetings, that we're probably overdue to write another letter to the editor, to the Current and Daybreak, and I think those things will, at least in my mind, I would center them around the fact that we've got these public forums coming up. Hopefully that will
yeah. good to
incentivize some
invite
people to, to get out and listen. Hey, Jeremy.
Tom, have you had any experience with this kind of thing with the select board on how to get people to come to a meeting?
Not really, but plenty when I was in the rep's office when I worked for the state rep's office. It's really, really difficult to get people to these things. It's usually, actually, Dylan and I were talking about this recently. that it's usually the same 30 to 40 people, no matter what, in every venue, no matter when you hold it, where it is, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah,
But, do you go online? Is it gonna be, videoed so people will be interactive?
I don't know.
Zoom?
Actually, I don't know who, I don't know whether Tom or Jeff, you might know the answer to this question, because I didn't get it back from Maureen, but I know that they've already alerted NCTV, so NCTV will be filming the session. What I
It
don't
says
understand,
Zoom information will be available soon
okay,
on
well, that,
the handout you sent.
Yeah, it's.
May I say something?
hang on a second, Donna, yes, but I'm sorry.
No, it'll be set up so it can be hybrid.
It's interactive.
So does NCTV set up and basically turn the Zoom on for us, or do they just do television and we have to do what we do?
They'll have it all set up. We'll simply have to just turn it on, but. I'm happy. to-
Well, who runs the IT for select board? The,
NCTV.
Charles.
and they're not gonna do it for us?
No, Charles has it all taken care of. It's all addressed. No one needs to
Okay.
worry about hybrid or NCTV.
Okay, so
It's all-
so we'll have Zoom, people will be available to dial in on Zoom, so we have an interactive ability as well as just people who watch the TV.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Donna, just cut you off. You had a question?
Oh, that's okay. I had just written a few notes about the presentation. And I thought that, I guess, Joe, you're appointed, self-appointed to speak. And maybe introduce some of the committee members who are there. Maybe describe a little bit about our process. Share some info about the Collins Institute, why we brought them in, who they are. That we meet every other week. A timeline, like when we want to present it in time for the ATM. Maybe even bring up some of the concerns that we've been deliberating about, such as at large versus certain sections. And I don't know if you want to sort of address that at first or wait for the questions, but
Well, I mean, I think Donna and, really the rest of the group, I kind of agree with the view that Curtis articulated. I think we've got, a bunch of slides that we've been using for some of these outreach presentations. I personally would cut it down to maybe 5 or 6 or 7 of them, just to make it as brief as possible. I was thinking of, that I would maybe call the meeting to order, because we will have a
Gotta be a
duly
posted meeting.
constituted meeting of the committee. I was actually gonna turn to Curtis and sort of, in terms of why we're here in large part because of your article. And I think you might
Yeah.
be a good way to launch that
She
story.
doesn't like that.
Well, and I would like to get a few other people besides myself.
No, I
you know,
agree.
well.
I'm happy to talk for an hour or two.
Let's dial
He
it back.
really doesn't like
5
that.
minutes.
I'm just thinking that the Nantucket Island Fair is coming up this weekend, right? And would it not be a good place for us to somehow put a message, an advertisement, a poster or something, or hand out flyers? Do you think they would mind? if We did that,
Why not have a booth?
Yeah, like have a booth. I really think that we need to outreach, like we have to go out and say, hey, guys, we really, really need you. Not that we want you or we're inviting you, here's this opportunity, but we need the voters to come and interact with us as part of our process. I think that would be a nice thing to do. And also in terms of who's presenting, I think whoever is going to be there, and we'll figure out ahead of time, each one of us should say a little spiel. So it's all of us. It's not just one or two of us. I think that would be very helpful in terms of just conveying that we're a committee and we're all thinking about it together.
How do you make a banner?
How do you what?
Make a banner and go in front.
Yeah, we can go to the place, the post corner, and I'll make the banner.
Just get a plaque. I would think that maybe we are there and people come up and we tell them what we're doing and then that we're to answer questions. I don't think we have to make a presentation to every person who shows up, because they'll be coming randomly.
Well, just more as an advertisement for our open.
Well, I think the sign would be good.
Yeah, and
And-
you're there to just be a
Sure.
person who's representing.
Yeah,
He's okay
I'd
with
put
that if
in
we do
an
that.
hour or two. I'd
I mean,
happy.
well, and how about just having handouts? I mean, just the way at town meeting, you
Yeah.
get bombarded on the way in with flyers.
Well, we can have that in addition to live people.
Can we say that?
Could we,
There's some goodies at our information session? 'Cause that
always
helps.
helpful.
No, it does, it really helps.
You know,
Coffee
we
and
do have a
goodies.
little problem in the fact that we don't have a budget, so.
Well, we can just ourselves bring coffee and.
Brownies.
when it's
That
possible,
4FG, do they let you?
could I speak?
Never seen that.
Yeah, Don, I'm sorry, Don.
That's okay, it's just hard I don't want to be
Okay.
rude, but I also would like
Just
to
don't wanna get anybody
participate.
all ruffled.
Would it be, what? What?
Nothing, I was asking if food was even allowed in the room the forums were gonna be at.
Oh, I thought we were
That
talking
actually
about
is
the
a good
fair.
point.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
we,
Goodies at.
what about reaching out to the PR person? Riulo, I mean, she's the one who's arranging the connection with Nantucket TV. Maybe she can come up with some ideas. I mean, she does this all the time. I
Well,
mean, you can
I actually
pick
think
and
that's a good
choose who you
suggestion.
want, what you want it to use.
I believe we are gonna be able to use, the town has some sort of contract space at the Inky Mirror, and I presume similar kind of arrangements with the Nantucket Current and Daybreak. So I think one of the things that I will probably do after this meeting is get back to her and say, what's the process and when are you gonna put these things in the paper so that they're,
Well, we're gonna see them before she does it, aren't we?
yes.
Well, I can answer the food question because when Jody Casper was introduced, they had coffee and cookies in the large meeting room at the back. So there's a precedent.
There's a little kitchenette back there.
Well, I don't know that, but yeah, there's a sink. Wash your hands.
I did, kind of cut down my presentation, the presentation we've been using. I only made 3 copies, but I'm happy to send it to everybody. So if you have any other, if you have questions or comments or.
Well,
wanna
send it.
Rewrite it.
Send it.
Anyone
We
wants to
can.
take a look. I will, after the meeting, I'll send that out, 10 copies.
Get another copy.
It'll be online.
You can take it. I like a look.
Okay, so it sounds like it's kind of an introductory couple of slides, the story of the committee, and then really leading to getting questions and comments from the audience.
Okay, but let's go back to the fair, because that's this weekend, right?
Yeah, it's coming to this weekend.
So,
I'll call, the organizer.
Oh, I got it.
Is it? Okay, I'll bounce that to you.
I can make sure we get.
do we get a table, a booth, I mean, what do we get?
Working on
Okay.
And I'll-
Hours?
I'll go to Poets Corner and just get a town council study committee
That's all you need to say.
to put up there,
Yeah, because then you can use it all over.
right? And so that'll be one banner. And what if we have, not this as a handout, but what if we boil that down into just
A
one,
one pager
like a handout?
at town meeting.
I would almost say,
What?
if I may, we did that little one pager that we gave before and say with the dates of.
I
everything
mean,
on
I
there.
think that-
I would just use that.
Sure, let's not reinvent the
Oh, yeah,
wheel.
that's a good idea. Yeah. So I'll print that out at Poets Corner and the banner.
And I think you've got the last version that we had before we sent it to Florence.
Okay, and then in terms of food for our 2 open houses, does everyone agree it would be nice to have some little,
Well, what are the hours, first of all?
The Saturday is at 10 o'clock, the Thursday is at 5:30.
We don't need food at 5:30.
I
don't think you
I
need
guess
food
I would argue against the food,
at either of them. Why bother? At 10 o'clock, you'd eaten breakfast. The Jody Casper thing was at 8 in the morning and it was,
well, I just know that it is a well-established way of
Pulling them in.
pulling them in.
I
Driving
doubt that
them to
very
get
much
the-
if anyone's coming for the food at the town
It's not
council.
that they're coming for the food, but it changes it makes it more welcoming and.
Well, then you're in charge of food.
They have to listen to you for 30 seconds if they're eating your breath, right?
Well, you know. I don't feel that strongly about it either way. I guess I'm not sure that it really. People are gonna be coming for the donuts, but some people come for
they're
donuts.
coming for the donuts. I'm just trying to think I just think it's our responsibility to try to really not just post it, but to explain to people, it would be very helpful for us to have interaction from voters about what we're doing.
I mean, of course, to be a wise guy, as we know from Sherwood Comments, if you have alcohol.
That
It
will
always
get
brings a
them to
crowd.
come, correct, yes.
I was just kidding.
Otherwise,
Meet us
it's
right
quite
there.
quiet.
Back in
It's
the
not
day,
wrong.
we certainly did.
Yeah.
Well, but I don't wanna go into stories past, long before my time, but what I've been told.
George Washington's
Select-
first election, he served 2 barrels of beer, 2 barrels of rum to get 200 votes.
Obviously, that's a historical person. Well, I think I remember, the Saturday is the 5th, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if we want to try to do coffee and cookies or something, I'm not,
Caroline's in charge.
Joe.
I think a sort of risk of saying the obvious, the hybrid part is going to be the key part, so people can ask questions. You're going into like one of the kind of last weekends of the summer, I know it's not, but just generally, and kids' sports teams and everybody's gonna be so the archive video and the hybrid participation are really the clutch parts, I think, for us. Maybe the coffee and donuts could be for us. But I don't think they're necessary, but it's a good idea. I've just, in my experience, that's not. You're gonna get diehards who really, really wanna know about this. The general public on any day is gonna be really tough.
Okay. So can I just make one more pitch for the possibility of this weekend being, we literally have the whole town coming to the annual fair, which is like 150 years old, the fair. So it's a natural gathering of the town that is rivaled only by town meeting. So should we consider having a couple of us there on purpose, not just to hand out about our information sessions, but just as people who are there able to converse for a couple sentences with anybody who is interested.
Isn't that your recommendation?
Well, I think that we should, if we're gonna do that, then I think it should be more than just me. I think it would be nice to have a couple of us.
I already volunteered.
Oh, good, fair.
What is the time frame for the fair?
I think it's 10 to 3, 10 to 4.
And the
Is it
four-
both
on both
days?
days, right?
Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Well, Sunday I'm
Are
working.
there, booths or?
We're gonna find.
I know there are some booths, because.
Or like a corner where we can, put our banner up and.
One of us is spouse is in
Yeah,
charge.
there's a whole tent, right? Like, I'll just speak, we have a table for the Natural Resources Department where we can set up and do things. There's a whole tent that's just focused on community programs and town permits, and the land bank usually has a spot, some of the other conservation groups. I know, some
Like Housing Nantucket, do
I
they
think
have some?
Kentucky usually has one. It's just community outreach. Sometimes you'll see stuff that's more related to like elder services, had a table there before. So it would go in that tent. There's a physical tent. Trying to find out if there's still table space or if it may be like in one of the corners where we may have something. We'll definitely have at least like a space for a banner and sharing.
I can bring a table.
Well, they'll provide that,
Okay.
so.
Do we need a tripod or anything to put a placard on, or you're
I'll
doing a
bring it.
banner instead of a poster?
They can provide that.
But it would be good if we all could, if those of us who are gonna be here who can, if each one of us could figure out like a 2-hour chunk of time to come, and we all just rotate into that, so there's 1 or 2 of us there all the time.
What's the
I'm
peak
signing
time,
up.
Jeff?
What's up?
What's the peak time, like noon to 2 or?
It varies on the weather and the depth. It's kind of shady this weekend all of a sudden. It's tough. I mean, I feel like the first hour and the last hour are usually the slowest. So
Yeah,
the
that's
10
what I'm
to
getting
11 are
at.
Slower. The 3 to 4 is a little bit slower, but I honestly feel like any time really that noon to 2 or 3 is usually the busiest.
Donna?
Yeah, first of all, I don't know if the other folks on Zoom, I can't hear you folks very well, and maybe it's on my end. But the other thing is, I was listening to the STR last night, and Nantucket TV was responsible for it. It was very hard. They had overlapping voices. You couldn't follow it. You could see it, but you couldn't follow it. So I would just say, I'm concerned that the hybrid, is okay and everything works well. Because I know there'll be, even though we can't vote, there'll be a lot of folks interested in this, and they can still influence other people who can vote.
Well, you're talking about the public forums in the community room.
Right, and right now it's hard hearing you, but it might be my laptop, I don't know.
I don't know either, but, I think that room probably has the most sophisticated AV equipment that we've got.
Good.
So if-
Okay.
If the sound isn't good in the community room, we've got other problems. But getting back to the fair, I would suggest let's cover 11 to 3, is that 4 hours, just two 2-hour shifts?
Shouldn't we just do it 10 to 4? So there are 3 2-hour shifts?
Well, I'll wander out around 10. Do we have to pay to park if you're working at the fair?
No.
Do you have to pay to park if you're not working at the fair?
Yes,
It's $31 this year.
$30.
So do we need a placard,
It's a
a
good
ticket,
cause.
or do we just say, hey, we're working at the fair?
No, I will give the fair work.
I'm available on Saturday, whatever you need.
We'll set it.
Okay,
I'm a little challenged. I cannot at all do Sunday, and I've already had 2 other sort of request obligations to help out at the fair, and my window's very small, but I'll try to shift those and do at least an hour maybe at this one. So I'll sign up somewhere, but
Or you can just.
I'm a little limited.
we got it.
Yeah.
We'll fill it in and then.
I'll be at Sherburne all Saturday morning.
Well, Sunday I have another job, so I'm.
all right. So I would appreciate it regarding the public forum, if people would, I'll send you the PowerPoint, if you have any comments or edits, that would be great. The other suggestion that Caroline had which was a very good one, was we should think about what kind of questions, obviously we don't know how many people are gonna show, but what sort of questions people might have, and do we have good answers for them all? I started, and I will send this around. I came up with about 12 questions, but, it was a start. Things like, open town meeting works fine, why do we want to change? Why didn't we try the representative town meeting? How come we went right to town council? I mean, people are gonna ask sort of obvious questions, so, I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. What do you?
I think it'd be great if we just went around and grabbed a few of these and we just. I think it's important for us to understand if we are all on the same page. Because our process is one thing, then each one of us has, slightly different opinions about different things, and that's perfectly fine. But in terms of our giving information at that public forum, this is our time now to figure out
Take your time.
what those discrepancies are and how to brand our answers as a committee answer, not just our individual answers. And what to do if one of us disagrees with something, how do we represent that while we're trying to represent the committee? So I think we should just iron that out now.
Well, my feeling is we're gonna get questions and challenges that may help us develop the next level of the presentation. So I don't want a canned answer when I'm talking to people. I'm ready to react to them and, we know where we are now and we can say we've considered all of this. We can answer it anyway, and each of us will answer differently. So this to me is, the fair is a good practice run for the other open houses.
Joe, one way you can do it, just type up a frequently asked questions page, and put all, the answers. And then you hand that out when people ask.
Well, what's the handout you're gonna have?
Well, I just wrote down 10 or 11 or 12 questions that occurred to me this afternoon that I think I can answer them all, but I'm not sure that we've all thought about them, and I just,
Well, you said there was a one pager that,
no, well, there's a one pager to promote the public forums, which I think should be a handout at the fair.
yeah,
Then at the public forum, I think we need to have at least thought about what questions we might get.
Well, we're
I
probably gonna
don't,
get
I don't mind your take on it, Curtis, that people ought to give their own sort of spin on it, but at the same time, it's gotta be support of the committee.
I didn't mean that it wasn't consistent, but, the people are gonna come up. The handout that you have for the forum, we ought to have for the fair too, right? Hello?
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
good.
I mean, the handout you've got for the forum, we should have at the
Yeah.
fair as a starting point.
Yes,
And then we can play off that.
Yeah.
I think this is a really good exercise to get us ready for the forums. Good idea.
So how many, do you mean this handout here?
No, the one page.
no,
Oh,
the one we sent to Florencia.
Yeah. So how many would you?
Where, you're gonna send that to us, right?
Yeah, we can
I'd
circulate
like
it
to see
everybody.
what you've sent her.
How
What do
many
you
should
think?
I print out for each
250?
day? 50? Thanks. So I understand that we all have our own different answers. Let's just review what some of those might be and how that, because I remember, a mentor once told me, how will that pass the Boston Globe test? If that thing that is said, if it's on the front page of the Boston Globe, how does that read? And we are trying not only to hear about what people are interested in on Nantucket, but we are also trying to convey who we are as a committee, because we want people to realize that we're working hard together and coming up with good ideas, so they trust what we're going to be offering. So if one of us is saying we really want 9 counselors and another one is saying we think 11 or more is better, that could come across as we're not
Divisive.
at all on the same
Yeah.
page, whereas one perhaps should say, we're still thinking about that. And some of us have different opinions, so that you're acknowledging that we're comfortable with the difference in opinions on the group because it's part of our group process.
And what do you think what would be your suggestion be to us to consider? I mean, trying to get people talking will help us create answers.
Yeah, so
There's a way you could make it go quickly, just on something like that, to say we're considering whether to recommend 7 to 11 people. And that way you dodge the conflict you put out there that you're still working on.
Yeah, I actually think that we ought to, where we've made at least a semi-decision, like 9 counselors. I think the response would be, well, we've decided on 9, the committee has decided on 9 counselors. But part of the reason we're having this forum is to get feedback from the community, and it may be that there's a very strong groundswell for 7 or 11. I don't.
I like that answer, Joe. Instead of saying 7 to 11, that's too big a spread. We're at the 9 level now. But we're interested in hearing one of the big questions, and I've been hearing it, is precincts versus at large or a combination.
Yeah, I had an email from someone who lives out in Wisconsin who was vehement about,
You said that to
I think I've seen it.
Yeah,
So let's practice our answers, our various different thoughts on that one right now. Question is, we really strongly urge you guys to have, precincts instead of at large.
Whose question was that?
Let's just say that that's.
A
that is
theoretical question
a
asked to
theoretical
you at the
question,
forum
so.
or the fair.
I mean, I disagree with your framing of the question, but I think the forum is for the public. So we should turn around and say, what do you think?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what
I-
I'm getting at.
Because we can do this here. And then come back.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That we want, what do you think? And,
right, and when they say, well, I think there ought to be.
and why do you
why
think that this is good?
And
And
I don't think we should argue with them. I don't think
Oh,
we
no.
should, I think we should take good notes and,
great idea.
well, I don't know. if I'd
No,
go
I
so-
mean-
don't necessarily go so far, I would say great idea, but I think we should listen to what,
Yeah.
the voters are the voters and they, we should listen to what the preferences that seem to be percolating in their minds
And
are.
we should have a sign-up sheet with emails so we can follow up with them if they want.
It's actually a very good idea.
Are you asking though, like what our response would be if the question is, are you doing precincts or is it all at large? And our response is like yours, 9, but right now we're looking at all at large.
Yes.
And if they're asking what our reasonings are, I mean, I agree with flipping the question back to them to see what they're interested, but if they're like, I don't know, I'm just curious why your group came to that. Getting that type of feedback from the group.
Yes, I think there are 2 layers. There's the layer where we want to stylistically, graciously get information back from people. So
Mhm.
that's what we're trying to do. We're listening more than we're talking. But also, we have been busy working and we have formed some opinions. And I just think it's good for us to take our own checks and balances as we go, to check on how are we actually thinking about some of these big questions, like precincts, like how many counselors, like elected versus appointed, just so that we are aware of how our group identity is as compared to each of our own opinions as we go along.
Anthony has it. Oh, sorry, Anthony.
Oh, no problem. This is mainly the discussion for the committee. I just wouldn't I don't mean to interrupt, but just to chime in a little bit is as you're considering the structure for the public comment meeting, everyone who comes to that meeting is going to have a substantially they're going to know a lot less about the charter and charters in generally than anyone from the committee at this point, just because you've been immersed in it for several months. If I understood Caroline's point correctly, you as a group have come to some decisions on some things, and so it may be helpful to sort of in terms of the listeners to frame their questions. If you sort of lay out, this is the item in the charter, it's just different than what we have. Here's why we did it. Those are your reasonings, and it's not to shut anyone down, but to frame their question to you, and then it's everything is changeable, and then you can listen to the questions. That I think sets a good stage for individuals who are not as immersed in it as you have, as immersed in this as you have been, to give you a question.
yeah,
Jeremy.
on all these issues, like precinct versus at large. The questions are the same. In other words, if it's precinct, the good on that could be viewed as the local interests are presented and are rallied about. So in other words, Mattocket is different than Wisconsin. The bad is you may have entrenched interests on a local basis that prevent an island-wide things, I believe. So in many ways, on each of these issues, you kind of know what the bookend spectrum is going to be. So you might as well just present it and then say, within that, here's how we have come down.
Right. No, I mean, I think, and what I wrote in this first draft is, we're, 9 counselors, 3-year terms, elected at large. because we felt that, looking at the island as a whole made more sense than trying to balkanize it and pit Mattocket against Wisconsin. I mean, it's really just not that big a place. And candidly, when we had the discussions about that, it was pretty unanimous. Now, I'm sure there will be people out there who feel like my little part of the island needs to be represented, but. All right,
Well, I think I would then respond with it might be a good idea if this was to pass, if this was presented into pass, that I'm sure there's associations, like there's a Mattocket Association, things like that, then maybe that's where they need to have the conversation where they would recommend and endorse a candidate to be voted on. I was trying to look at my notes. Wasn't one of our reasons about the precincts and stuff is because we don't draw those lines?
I remember that.
So.
I think they're really hard to draw.
Right,
because-
so I think that was part of it might not be as cut and dry as somebody from Mattocket and Wisconsin is thinking. You might not get the precinct area you think you would get, and that might not be in our control. So isn't that one of the things that we had talked about as to why we would lean against that?
Anthony, just a question for you. I don't know, are there rules about if a town wants to establish precincts, do they have to have the same number of voters in each subdivision or that sort of thing, or what?
Yeah, so that's
Have too much
correct.
smart people.
We discussed this a lot, sort of way back when I know Tom Dixon chimed in on this. There's a state law that describes how you divide up the precincts. It would either be, it would be the select board at this point, who would divide the community up into the precincts, and not to sort of step into the role of the committee, but we looked at a map that talked about the population of Nantucket, and there's a central core, and then there's much smaller places, sort of on the outskirts. And my memory of the discussion was the complexity of there's a minimum number you have to reach. Of reaching that minimum number, it's just it would be very hard to draw precincts in Nantucket based on your population and its distribution across the island.
That map was,
Sure.
map was the best visual we had.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all felt that, 90% of the population is within a mile of town and everybody else is so scattered that you would have very strange shaped precincts.
Well, it was,
Yeah.
for example, Mattocket may have 50 people year round. They would end up taking all of North Liberty through out to Mattocket to make the population for a precinct. And the same thing with Wisconsin, they'd be doing Quidnet and Popus. And then coming in by Don Allen Ford to create the base number that you need. So that's why I think we went to the at-large.
Yeah.
I think the compelling visual that the Collins Center provided was where they mapped all of the
This one?
candidates over
Did
the
he
last
get his
decade.
own?
And they're all pretty much from the central.
Yeah,
And so that's been open at large, where all of the candidates have been generally from the same area. That if you drew precincts, you haven't been on candidates from those areas historically. Anyways, plus the challenges of balancing the precincts. I think our map.
I remember that.
And what if
It
there's
was
no
really
candidate
skewed.
from the precinct?
Rick
There
Atherton is
was
the
a
only
lot of
one.
ifs that
Yeah.
just seemed,
I think the answer to that question is really a lot simpler though. And there are gonna be some people that wanna argue this to the spelling of words, right? But I think that it's really simple is, we looked at the data and we talked to our experts at the Collins Center and the committee came to the consensus that at large made the most sense for Nantucket. How do you feel about that? And then always point back to getting what their question is or what their issue is. And it may ultimately be the same thing over and over again, but we know what our feedback is. It's their feedback that we need
Yeah.
to understand.
That's really the purpose of doing.
To address this, it would be nice to have precision. We have 8,500 roughly registered voters in Nantucket.
10,000,
Is it 10,000?
just
now?
under 10,000.
Okay. what is, maybe for Anthony, what is the state law minimum voters when you apportion this? We know that.
Let me turn it over to Mel or Pat. We looked up the number. I think I misstated it last time. So this one, I might even remember the number. I think it was 4,000, but I could be.
I don't have it offhand, but it is the number, and that's how you determine how many precincts you'll have, because
Okay, so
But state law may render this moot. If you get 10,000 registered, or slightly under 10,000 registered voters, and you can only apportion to a minimum of 4,000 registered voters, you're never gonna get, it's just not gonna work.
does that, did you guys get that? So if it's 4,000, that says 2.5 precincts, right? I mean,
I think it's actually a lot less than that. I think it might be 400. I think we looked it up last time. So I don't think that was the issue. They all have to be equally distributed. That, and they have to have contiguous lines that make sense. You can't take part of the island and another part
No
that's not
gerrymandering.
connected. So there are some rules. But I don't think it's 4,000. I actually think it might be 400, but I'd have to look it up again to make sure.
okay,
Um,
but even so, I think that the point is still true that Nantucket would be a very difficult geographic and sort of population distribution place to come up with, I don't know what you want to call it, but reasonable looking districts. And even whether it would be 7, 9, or 11, I think as the number went up, it would become more and more challenging.
I think it goes without saying, but I think it bears saying that it's because we are a seasonal community, that this is the way out here. And so the population ebbs and flows in a way, and we have a whole bunch of us that are not voters, as we've discussed. So that in part, that's why we're concentrated in a way that couldn't be divvied up. Also, we are a small rural island, and there's, I think, a big difference between thinking of ourselves as one island and thinking of ourselves as different neighborhoods, and that I'm for governing.
I like one island. Good point.
Okay. Anything else on public forums, the fair?
I can get from, we haven't taken one.
Oh, great. So we only have sign up for Saturday. Does anyone feel like they will be around on Sunday?
I'll be at the fair. all
Maybe,
day.
why don't we work it out on Saturday? I'm not
I'll-
sure about Sunday.
Yeah, I'll do some stuff.
I may be able to come out Sunday afternoon,
Okay,
May.
I can at least check on the table periodically, like I said, I'll be there all day, both days, before and after. Never before. Yeah, Friday.
Be out there midday on Sunday afternoon.
So I can check in on stuff, and if I hit, I'll. I
Well,
can
put me
always
in for
fill
2
there
o'clock.
a little bit, or for
Or-
that's for
2 to 4 or 12 to 2?
No, 2 to 4, because I'm still coming out of my morning job. But I may show up at 1 or 1:30.
And there are plenty of tables that are there, at least historically, right? If there are handouts and things that people can put, they don't even think it hurts to have something that's there, that a card that says, if you have a question, raise your question.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
make
that's
sure we
good.
have,
Oh, that's good.
well, yeah, we need a list of people. Give us your name and your email.
Great idea, John. Are there gonna be snacks there?
Yeah, the ones you bring.
the snack lady.
There are lots of food vendors,
Snack.
lots of food vendors that would be out there that are providing high quality food.
So that's a positive change.
We don't want to take away from them.
Most of them are selling their foods for their gain or for scholarships or charities. So I encourage people to.
Right.
Buy there.
Vendors have.
I was thinking of
Okay.
bringing a chicken.
Yeah.
Are we reasonably done on the forum, public forums?
They get together.
Oh, Anthony, fire away. Sorry.
No problem. I just wanted to share some information so that the committee has it as it goes into its public comment session. So Pat found the statute, chapter 54, section 2. Each precinct must have a minimum of 400 what was it? Was it residents, Pat, or was it voters?
It says,
Inhabitants.
not more than 4,000 inhabitants. And, not, but must be greater than 400, so,
Inhabitants, not voters.
right.
So just so if the question comes up, you guys have that information locked in.
You people.
Already,
Yeah,
But
minimum
I'm-
of 400.
Anthony and the guys from Collins Center, if you don't mind, I'd like to actually skip down to, number 6
There'd be a lot of
and just talk a little bit about,
having it be just inhabitants. and stuff.
the sort of the timing and whether or not we make
There's like population
um,
shifts.
town meeting 2025. As I think most of you know, I met with Libby about a week and a half ago. It's a good meeting. I think she's still supportive, although I think neutral in terms of the outcomes of this. But one of the follow-up emails I got, which I think I shared with you all, is her concern that both KP Law resources and then just the other issues that are to be on the ballot on the warrant for town meeting 25. You know, I just got that sort of wishy-washy sense that, you know, we may or may not be able to get on the docket, regardless of whether we make citizens warrant or a citizens article deadline or the select board, you know,
Adoption, yeah.
supports it or not. And then, Bo, you sent me an email with, I thought, an interesting perspective, which was maybe we don't want, maybe we want to be on. I think I read it. So would you, did I read that wrong or?
No, yes, that was my opinion, and, I think this would have a better chance if it had its own meeting, own special. And if it was at the front of the kingdom, because if it was at the back of the it would go nowhere.
Well, I've thought about Bo's comment and I really like the idea of the question of town council is a special question. So I like the idea of it being at a special town meeting if we can arrange that we can have a special town meeting. You know, sort of be assured that can get called. And I think something special is changing to a town council. I like special town meetings, so it sort of has an emotional feel to me, which I commend you for raising that question.
I think that's a good idea, actually. But we also, in the meantime, could, if we didn't go for a May town meeting, which I have my reasons for thinking that we still could, but if we didn't, you can do a sense of the meeting question at town meeting. And that might be a good guide for us. So Sarah asked the question and people put in their vote, like, do you want to move to town
I
council?
don't know if you want to skew things.
It's one of the only ways to know. I mean, where it's gonna go, and just because it might seem risky, but you might wanna know.
Do you do that on a ballot as well, though? Because I feel like there's always a different group that might show up.
Oh,
at
for sure,
ballot.
there's, but it's just a way to have a little focus group.
No,
I don't think it wouldn't discourage me. Just
Yeah,
to
very
figure-
had an even better point than I was thinking. But to jump off Jill's, when I was in the rep's office, there was later a piece of legislation that came and was never ultimately passed, but the legislature did take into account that there was a sense of the meeting on it that passed. So those things do matter in the wider governmental sense, I think.
Well, you're the one who commented that the annual town meeting is gonna be so jammed that
Yeah.
we might want a meeting or two ago and
Right. And
We heard that.
You can see that this article could get
buried.
buried or at least dragged to the end of the, you
To
know.
Bo's point, yeah.
And that's of concern, but with our own sort of, if you go to the, whatever the process is to sort of request a special town meeting for this particular article. Are we all, then I think we're taking a risk of attendance because, I don't know, special town meeting last night was 700-800 people. I think we need, if this is gonna be successful, we need to recruit or motivate 700 to 1,000 people to show up to be able to win the vote against the folks that are opposed.
But the people that come to special town meeting are the ones who care the most. Usually, I don't say they care the most, that's not the right phrase, but they care about what's on that particular
Well, maybe
warrant.
the other just thing I'll throw out there is, I'm going to the select board meeting this afternoon to give a little update of where we are. And my closing pitch is to ask them to sponsor it as a select board article. I put you on the spot, but
I will tell you what I'm gonna say if I have a chance tonight, which is, I don't think it's a particularly proper role for me to, as a select board member, to sponsor an article that dissolves the legislative body. So I personally wouldn't vote for that as a select board member, but I support this, as why I'm on the committee, I support this process to come up with whatever the will of the committee is, and then to take it forward in a citizens warrant article. I feel very strongly about that, it's not my role as a select board, as a member of the executive body to do that. Jeff? You?
So I actually agree with Tom.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that's what also kind of draws me to special town meeting is one of the mechanisms to call special town meeting is to go out and collect 200 signatures of registered voters to go. And what better way to get people to come and spread the word about what we've been working on and doing than going to collect signatures and actually talking to people and saying, if you're interested, please sign. And then you can come forward and say, it doesn't have to be 200 exactly, if we collect
1,000.
or 1,000, right? Like, you build some momentum publicly, and then it's a movement that's not, it's not the select board, right? And I 1,000,000% agree, it's not the select board's place to say like, hey, we want to change the government, we're gonna sponsor an article.
Yeah.
Because it's not their role. It's the citizens' role, right? It's the legislature's role to say, we need to change, do it. To me, it helps build that trust. It's almost more of a sense of a meeting question to say, we have enough support to call the meeting, to have to do it. And if you collect an overwhelming amount of signatures, because obviously 200 will turn into 75, and because it's just how handwriting and those things go for certifying those. But if you get 600, now you built discussion amongst the community, and you forced yourself to do it.
So is the sense of the committee then, I should not ask the select board,
Yes.
even though I disagree with your Tom? We don't,
Why don't you tell the
with all due
select,
respect.
why don't you tell the select board that one option is to bring it to them, but in conversation, we feel that a special town meeting focused on this major item would be more appropriate or very appropriate.
I'm not sure I want to let that cat out of the
Yeah,
bag.
right.
Okay, your call.
But I have no trouble saying our goal is to try to complete our work in time for the citizens article deadline in whatever that turns out to be, October, November.
Okay.
If the select board, I could certainly say, if the select board would be willing to help us by sponsoring the article so that we could make, take advantage of that later deadline, that would be great, but we respect whatever your opinions are.
One of the things that I keep thinking is, it would be great if it passed on its own, and I can see where it has a better chance at a special town meeting, but usually these things take a few times. I mean, if we're being honest, something big like this, and so we need to think about that
Yeah.
too, that we can't look at it like we're one and done. We're not.
I agree, but I think if you just look at demographics, like the people, the physical people, sure. This is gonna take people with families, like moms, people that come out for one week, not 4 nights. And be there to talk about it. And then but the demographics of night 4 and annual are not favorable.
Oh, I agree. I think doing it as a special time, I'm just saying, the first time you bring a big issue up, it often doesn't
Yeah.
work. So do we want to go into a town meeting and get that out there as a way of explaining what's happening and then call a special?
Anthony, you raised your hand up.
Yeah, just some information for, I guess, for the committee to sort of mull over. So and again, Nantucket can go in whichever direction it deems appropriate, but I guess just speaking from our experience at the Collins Center, when we come to a project like this, it's usually the committee like this does report their report to the select board, and then select board forwards it on to the town meeting. And I'm not saying that this is the reason for it, but there is an alternate path to doing a charter, which is under 43B, the home rule section of the state, under state law, which talks about going out and getting a petition and then getting I think it's 15% of the population, which is more than 200 for a place like Nantucket. But there's a path to adopt a charter through petition laid out in state law. So I think that's probably some of the reasons why you would choose one direction when I say choose one direction or another, I mean in terms of like going a special act route versus a home rule route. So that's just information for the committee to consider as it sort of thinks about that.
Yeah, but I thought we've already set sail for the, special legislation route as opposed to the getting 15% of the population signatures special charter route.
That's correct. I'm only adding that here because you're just having a discussion about getting a number of signatures on a petition to add it to a special meeting, as a citizen, I think as a citizen's article. So it's interesting in that it's kind of, in some ways, kind of doing the 43B home rule procedures route in combination with the special act route that you're doing now. So I'm just sharing that as additional information for how the community is choosing to move forward its charter proposal.
Yeah, I'm just very confused. I think I need a refresher on the thing you're referring to, which is way back when we decided to go one route versus the other.
Yeah, but now we're talking about third route, which is special town meetings. So I think it's fine to.
But it's home
revisit all.
rule versus a charter. There's two tracks. One is the home rule petition, which I think John Giorgio felt was easier and better. And the other is amending the charter, which is the 15% of the population. The home rule petition, you can get action on easier, I believe. So that was the direction I thought we were.
I think that's the direction that I felt we've been pursuing all along. We're not a charter commission. We are, committee set up by an article that has its goal to propose special municipal legislation that ultimately goes to the state house.
Which is home rule, and then go to the state house. That I believe is where we are.
Yeah.
Does that help you?
Keep going.
Jeremy?
The question, how does the order of the warrants at town meeting get established? And is there a mechanism that we could ensure that we are number one?
So it depends on annual and special, and I am not an expert on this, but I've been through this twice or 4 times now or whatever. And Jeff, you might know, kind of hop in on, because I know you probably had articles that you followed through and all that. The annual, usually the budget articles are in the beginning.
Yep.
And then they are kind of in groupings. So the home rule petitions are in a group at the end, and we file more home rule petitions than any municipality in the Commonwealth, which is a big problem for young Mr. Moakley, who is about to get elected in January. He's gonna have to deal with all these. But anyway, so they're kind of done in groups, and I think they are somewhat fungible based on what the select board and the town want to do, but there's some precedent for the way they are set. But for a special, I think it's kind of the select board, our article went first because it was select board sponsored. And then the articles were ordered by accordance of when we received them. So Charity's article, Charity and Matthew and PNF's article came in literally the first to Erica or to the town clerk, was submitted. That was second. And then they were ordered after that in group, either in keeping with when they were received and or whether they were a zoning in a general bylaw, because you don't want to go zoning general, like that doesn't make sense. So it kind of depends on the article and when it is and what the meeting is.
And
is
zoning
there any-
tends to go towards the end of
Correct.
the,
Yeah.
of the warrant,
And
these.
then citizen warrant.
And
That's
is there any way away from custom to change this? Because at the beginning of both meetings, annular, you got everybody. You got, we had what, 1,400, 1,500 this last annual meeting. And everyone has energy. At the end of it, you have 375 people that die hard that love being there. So do we know away from custom how it is we could make this number one?
Well, I guess I would argue for 2025, there's no chance, because there are other things that the
Yeah.
select board and the town feels more important than this. Anyway, but if we go to special, get petitions and pursue our own special town meeting, I think we would be number one. I mean, we're in effect causing the thing to happen.
Yep.
What didn't we went that route?
Joe, if I may, I'll just quickly read the state statute for calling a special town meeting, which is chapter 39, section 10. The selectmen shall call a special town meeting upon request in writing of 200 registered voters of 20% of the total number of registered voters of the town, whichever number is the lesser, such meeting to be held not later than 45 days after the receipt of such request. And there's a little bit more, but that's the gist.
So
of it.
200 works.
Well, that sounds good.
And the 45 days, though. So
Yeah, so I'll make this real quick, but for special town meeting, this one, there was some talk about right after town meeting, because the STR articles went down, there was a group that said, we have the signatures, we're gonna call this. So we added it to an agenda. The select board talked about it and we thought it best that we would call our own and allow a little bit more time for other articles to come in. And also so that the voters wouldn't have to show up in June or July. Does that everyone, kids in camp, people working, summer madness, so it was sort of like give and take, but the select board, we must do this per state statute. So if you guys did this tomorrow and submitted your 200 signatures, we'd have to do it within 45 days. That's the law.
And then what percentage of the voters, when they vote on this, make it, are required? Is it 51% or 2/3?
It's a simple majority.
Home rules are simple.
And then it would have to pass the
No,
legislature.
I think you were asking how many people need to show up. Are you asking that?
I don't think
Is
there's any
there a
close-
quorum
I don't think
requirement
there's
of the
a quorum
5%?
For the-
There is, Sarah announced no quorum requirement for a special. Have a comment?
Right.
But for budgetary items there.
And then in the past, it's a simple majority.
Comment?
Okay, yeah.
I've been thinking about this and I'm wondering what if we did our special town meeting at 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon instead of at 7:00 or 5:00 at night? Just thinking when people are available, we're so locked into that evening, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday thing. So I just want to try to be creative. When's a good time? Tom has an answer.
No, you're channeling me because in our meeting last Wednesday, I opened the conversation. I think my fellow board members were into it as well, and that's why we voted Saturday, May 3rd as the ATM date.
Cool. Well, again, for a special, I'm thinking of not locking up people who have to feed the kids at 5:00.
The last town meeting you'll ever have to go to.
Who will? Oh, right.
The voters.
Yeah.
The voters.
That's a good way to
Come
select.
to the last town meeting you'll ever have to attend.
Well-
That's what we should put the banner.
I want to be flexible
You wanna go
enough
to
on
one
the
more?
timing of the meeting to be able
Somebody
to
will
attract
slash
the
my
most
tires
people.
if
So
I do
they're
that.
right on it already.
That
All
guy's
right.
in the state and
All right, this was good. This
I
was
like
good.
that
This was
idea.
good. This was helpful since I do have to meet with the select board in about an hour and a half, so I think I will modify some of what I will say.
But But I actually think it's, I wanted to go back, I think it's very important that we not ask, not even joke about asking the select board to sponsor it, especially since our member on this committee has said so fervently that he would feel uncomfortable. I think we should respect that, and I really agree. I don't think it's appropriate, and it's not the right flavor for us.
So get 200 signatures and we're done.
Well, and I
No,
think
we
what I'm
gotta
just-
wite a report, like Anthony
Yeah,
said.
no,
if
I
there's
think I would
other
say we're
things
gonna have
we
a
wanna do.
report and we'll do our best to make a citizens article for 2025 ATM. But if we don't, we will think about other alternatives.
So before anybody in the committee goes out and gets 200 signatures and submits them, like, that can be something that through Joe or through the committee, you could work with the select board and town admin to say, when are the dates possible?
Right.
What is the school, like, how can this, like, last night, we had to be done last night. We would have went till 3 in the morning if we had to last night.
And also after last night, there might be people that wanna do another special election coming up, so you never know. So it'd be good
I don't wanna share the agenda with everyone.
I know, but I'm not positive that will end.
If I can, I think the really nice thing about special town meeting is it grants us really two things that we don't necessarily have. It lets us be sure that the final product that we have in the final report is ready to go. And because we can create the deadline for that, right? But I think it also, I think just like Tom said, it's that perfect situation to say, we have all of this, it's ready to go. We're willing to work with the select board to say, when is it the best point for us to bring it forward for discussion? We're willing to do the legwork to get out there and put it out there. And I agree with Jill in the sense that there are a lot of initiatives that don't pass the first time. And the reason why, personal opinion, why it is, because things happen where people don't get the information in advance. They don't participate in advance. No one goes to finance committee meetings. I mean, Jill goes to more than anybody because she's on there. And how often does someone from the public attend?
It's very rare.
Curtis is there.
Right.
The short-term rentals brought out some people, but still not that many.
But not many,
actually.
right? Is,
Not compared to the 2,000 people who are registered to rent their homes.
and the reason why those things fail, and trust me, I've had plenty of town projects and things fail, is because people don't understand what's being asked. And taking that extra step of getting out in front of people and building momentum and providing that education is helping to narrow that margin of failure for the first time. And if it still doesn't pass the first time, you're starting from a better spot towards the second time because you've started to build understanding. in the
Exactly.
community, right?
It's an
Like,
education to go through it. That's why I'm a little
it
nervous
always is.
about saying, hey, we're gonna just go for one, single rifle shot with a special town meeting. That makes me a little,
Well, you can still, I mean, you can still bring it back again, right? But it's also.
yes.
How do you get this information to people and to understand what the change is gonna be? And then you'll see where it is, right? Every time you learn from it a little bit. But I think getting it out there and making it something that's more, I hate this term so much, but more grassrooty than we're gonna tell you this is what we should be doing.
You don't like
I think-
grassroots, you don't like grassrooty.
I don't like the phrase grassroots. I don't know. It always sounds.
Why?
Like, I don't know.
I'm
I just-
actually curious about that.
Of the people.
That's what that's what
That's what it is.
we're shifting to.
I like saying it's.
All right.
For the people more than grassroots.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks,
You'll
thank you
grassroots,
all
love
for
it.
your thoughts and input on this. It was actually very helpful for me today. We have one other thing on the agenda today. Mel and Patricia and Anthony, we're gonna talk about some of the issues in section 5. So, thank you guys for being so patient and, sitting in through our conversation. I turn it over to you.
So this is going to be relatively quick because section 5 is a small section. We're gonna email this out to the committee after this meeting. Just pulling up the right document. So Article 5 is administrative procedures. and we talked about this a little bit last time. So what you're gonna have in front of you is sort of a vanilla version of what this will look like. And I think the important thing, sometimes underestimated, is that it vests the power to, it creates a process for reorganizing, creating, eliminating, and restructuring city departments and, I'm sorry, town departments and agencies. So just to summarize this in the first part, it vests the power to start the process with the town manager, and then to create a reorganization plan. In other words, talking about what departments are you talking about reorganizing, and then submitting that proposal to the town council and having the town council vote up or down to approve those changes. So that's one of the sort of most important parts of this section. The next part is talking about how employees are going to be promoted and appointed outside of any collective bargaining agreement. So these are your non-bargaining employees. And again, to summarize this, it's essentially based on merit and performance. And then some other sections are, I'll sort of gloss over this one, just to powers and duties of the various boards that the town can create through ordinance or otherwise. And then certain positions that are going to be that the town's going to fill that aren't the elected positions that we already covered, but certain other appointed positions that are a high enough level to be mentioned in the charter and have their roles in their appointment process sort of laid out. Now, I've got a memo from that Mel's going to go through to sort of think about these positions. And it's, broadly speaking, it talks about sort of putting things into different buckets. Who's got the authority to sort of manage these departments? Is it sort of vested with that agency versus the appointing authority? I'm sorry, versus the appointed officer. It's going to lay out some buckets for you. So I'm going to turn over to Mel now to share, and I'm going to share the memo, Mel, and you can sort of go into the sort of structure of how this can be thought through.
So this memo is really just a draft because it's a work in progress. But as Anthony mentioned, you've been doing a lot of work in terms of determining who the elected boards would be compared to the appointed boards, and you talked about the appointment process a lot. But what we are talking really now is about administration. And when we talk about administration, we're talking about things like appointment of the department head, appointment of the personnel within a department, which you already indicated you prefer it to be a department head who makes those administrative calls. But even then, the town manager has to authorize those appointments, staff appointments. We're talking about control of property, facilities, talking about things like purchase of goods and services and personnel management. And currently, or I should say, the standard for a council manager charter is for the town manager to have pretty wide authority over the appointed or appointment of staff, department heads, and just generally administration of departments. But in smaller towns like Nantucket and others who have a lot of elected bodies and a lot of traditions for independence in those boards, you can make exceptions. And in fact, the town of Nantucket already has exceptions in its current charter. And I wanted to just review those with you. So if you look at section 4.8, it's in the middle of this draft memo, it states that the town manager shall not exercise any control over the discretionary power vested in any town board, council, commission, or committee not within town administration. And earlier in the charter, there are exceptions to town administration, and they include the airport, the park and recreation, the school department, which is pretty much always exempted from our discussion here, and the water department. So we have to determine whether any of those or all of those departments, if you will, will continue to have some independence or not. Now, the school department will. We are telling you that, and we've already sort of built that into our charter. But if you look at section 4.9, what this does is it gives those exempt departments the ability to appoint its its staff, including department head, and then also to just for the town manager only to be involved in general administrative procedures, but not any substantive decisions. So when we figure this out, it could turn out that we would address it in Article 5, the one proposal, the draft that Anthony has. Maybe we deal with it a little bit in 3, 4, and or 5. But it's something that we want to clarify a little bit more before we bring specific decision points to you. For example, we don't see the town clerk in either the town administration or the exceptions of departments. And so we probably want to learn a little bit more about how this works in practice before we can advise you. And at some point, it might be a worthwhile endeavor to have the town manager appear or her staff to talk a little bit more about how these departments relate to the town manager, especially as we look towards a manager council form of government where the executive power really is consolidated into the town manager's jurisdiction.
In fact, that was sort of one of the pieces of homework they were going to give to the committee in for discussion today is because this is the meat of operations, this would be a good point to either have an offline discussion with the manager through the chair or through someone else, or to actually bring her into, or someone from the staff to bring them into one of the meetings to talk about these particular departments that are already called out in your current charter, how they operate, how they interact with the town administration, and whether you want to continue to have that separation moving forward in the new charter.
I mean, I'd be happy, my guess is Libby would be willing to come in, assuming it fits with her schedule, she'd be willing to come in and talk about this. It just strikes me that some of the departments or enterprise funds that Mel mentioned, I mean, I think the airport should stay as independent and administered the way it is today. Parks and Rec and DPW and what have you report directly to Libby as it is. The sewer department is an enterprise fund. The solid waste and what do you call it? The landfill operation is an enterprise fund. I think those things that more likely than not should just be left the way they are. And
well, remember, sewer is the
Town
select
employees.
board are the
the
sewer commissioners.
Yeah.
That will have to change some.
well, and then the issue of whether we want to pursue trying to create a combined sewer water commission as opposed to simply leaving it the water commission.
You could ask Libby about that.
You
Yeah.
should definitely ask her about that. That's tricky.
Right.
That's not so obvious, or would have been done.
And
The untricky part about it is every time you dig up the sewer, you replace water lines. And when you dig up water lines, you try to look at the sewer, so
Yeah,
they're
I hear you.
really very
They
closely.
dig up electrical too. I mean, I think they've done a great job of trying to
Yeah.
dig
But-
once and.
But once you add sewer, you're kind of changing zoning, and you're saying you have endless bedrooms.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
that's that's
Oh,
a
we-
whole different world than what you're doing
We
in the
went through
water.
that last night, didn't we?
Totally. So I'm just saying there's a,
Well, how about,
that's
I
not so
will,
obvious.
I'll take it to ask Libby whether our next meeting, she'd be able to come and spend an hour with us and go through some of these things and get her opinions and.
And it would be helpful if she could come in person rather than Zoom for that meeting, or whatever meeting she's available for.
Okay. I'll be happy to do that.
so there isn't much, we assume you're going to have a lengthy discussion on this public input meeting. So we didn't have much. This is a relatively small article. We're going to bring it back to you. There's probably going to be some additional positions in there. The current position for appointment is the town council. It specifies town council appointment. Again, you're gonna I'm gonna forward you the current draft after this meeting, but there could be some other positions that go in that article, such as the town treasurer, where in most towns under state law it's elected. In Nantucket, it's an appointed position, and so we codify that in the charter. And then you want to consider other sort of high-ranking positions. If you look at your charter, and the cross-reference with the county charter, there's some positions like the finance director. It talks about some things for the clerk that are sort of unique to Nantucket. So that will be part of the discussion about other positions and departments to go into this Article 5.
Can you produce Anthony or Mel, do you have a list of the whatever we want to call it, the departments or these administrative departments? So that, you know, we can kind of tell Libby, okay, here's the six, whatever it is, you know, X number of departments that we need to talk about and get your input on.
Yeah, yes, that's all written out in your current charter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Mel's kind of laid it out in his memo, sort of some of the higher level, like organs that you just saw that you'll be getting shortly.
All right. Anything else from you guys?
Anything, Mel or Pat, is there anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah.
Yeah, what about zoning tonight? Do you get any questions on how that works with the town council?
I will plead ignorance because we haven't discussed this.
I know, when are we gonna discuss that?
Should we just quickly discuss it right now? Just to get ourselves primed for that while we've got these things?
Well, I
Well-
think Anthony's mentioned it before, that the planning board would put forward articles, because we would keep an elected planning board. And they would put forward articles to the town council, who would then approve or not approve what that article or that piece of legislation is. Is that how I
Well-
understand it? And then it would be a 2/3 vote?
Yeah, well, I guess let me sort of talk about this at a high level. So planning is important, so I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not sort of a unique part of a charter. It's not really something that comes up as part of the charter. The way
Don't
that
tell our planning board that. I'm just kidding.
Well, and so to sort of add some nuance to that response is that the zone changes, geez, I'm losing my words. Sort of variances, you know, other types of things, they're covered by state law, state statute.
Yeah.
And sort of as you sort of correctly prescribed it, there are specified groups that can submit, if we're just talking about changes to the zoning article, to the zoning bylaw or zoning act of the town. One of the groups is the planning board. One of the groups is the town council. One of the groups is the property owner or property is owner affected, and there's certain parameters around that. Different types of petitions that can be submitted to change zoning. So the example that you used is the planning board. They can, on their own initiative, draft a amendment to the zoning article and submit it to the town council, which has to vote on it pursuant to state law, which is the 2/3 vote that you raised. I think the important thing about zoning in the context of what Nantucket is considering is that the power that would have been vested in the town meeting will now be vested in the town council. And you can look at 43, sorry, I don't want to say the statute because I might misquote it, but the state statute which governs zoning, and it lays out that, you know, what their votes have to be, their timelines. I think they've got a certain amount of days before that they have a certain amount of days that they have to act on certain proposals for them to be valid or invalid.
Well,
but-
wait, so can I ask a question? Because I'm very process minded. So it sounds like what you're saying is they have to respond to things as they come in, and they can't respond to things and say, okay, well, we're gonna address zoning every second Tuesday of every other month or something like that.
So I'm trying to think about the best way to answer it. So they can be proactive in the sense that the city council, I'm sorry, that the town council and the planning board have the ability to generate their own zoning amendments. So the city council, a councilor could propose an amendment and then put it on the docket for the council to consider. The planning board, in the same sense, can generate their own proposal to amend zoning and put it on the docket for the council to consider.
But a citizen does not have to go to the planning board in order, they can go just right to the town council? Because that's not what people are used to here, you know, obviously with the form of government that we have, people go to the planning board, they get an up or down motion. I mean, we have a lot of people that want to change zoning just for their property. And I think, to be honest with everyone here, I think if we go to town council, you're gonna see a lot more of that.
Yeah, and I begin, so I'd say don't hold me to this because I haven't looked at the zoning act in a little while. But if memory serves, a citizen, someone, and again, I talk about it in terms of classes of individuals that can submit these types of petitions, because you have to be within one of these classes, which is again, the planning board, the city, the town council, or I think it's a property owner. And then there's certain cases, there's people who aren't property owners that can do zoning for larger sections of town. But assuming you're a property owner, you submit your petition to the town council. If memory serves, it has to be forwarded to the planning board. The planning board has to have a hearing on it, and then they have and they present a recommendation back to the town council.
Yeah.
And then the town council takes the recommendation from the planning board, the proposal from the property holder, and they can vote in favor or against based on what they think, using the recommendation as additional information.
This is gonna be a big change for people.
But Jill, did I hear correctly? You can disintermediate the system today and go directly to town council? Or you still have to go through each of the committees? I heard two separate things.
You said refer to the zoning,
I think you're gonna apply to the town council, they're gonna refer it
refer it.
to the planning board, who's gonna give it an up or down motion. And I guess would have
And
some
have
sort of
hearing.
timeline, and then go back. It's a little bit about how HDC appeals works now. Sounds similar to that. but-
And I think Mel has something he wants to add.
Yeah, Mel?
Yeah, the process is really, as Anthony said, it's really the town council just taking the place of the town meeting. Right now, if someone submits a proposal for a zone change, the planning board by law, by state law, has to have a public hearing. Same thing with the council. So I really don't see it a lot different. Town meeting can take up zoning anytime it calls a town meeting, and the council can do the same.
Any other?
Well, I mean, we could look at last night, because we had a lot of zoning questions in front of us, and we could just run that through, how it would look like in a town council. I think that would be very instructive for our process.
I'm not sure, I certainly this afternoon, I need to say any more than process works kind of in the same vein as open town meeting. You know, an individual that wants to change zoning has to submit a proposal to the town council. It gets referred to the planning board. The planning board schedules a hearing and gives it an up or down. It goes back to the town council and they get to vote on it. I mean,
Yeah, it'd be
It's
7 or
happened.
9 of us up there instead of town meeting.
It still requires 2/3.
Yep.
So you need, 6 of 9.
And I gotta say, that sounds really stressful. I don't mean to be flippant, but.
I think it's gonna be the
But-
biggest.
Being 1 of 7 or 9, like I'm just like, board member, if that were to transfer over, deciding the future of our own home. And $100 million ask or whatever it's gonna be, and this stuff, this is, this is a lot on whoever's gonna serve to make these decisions.
Well, and just like we were talking about earlier, if you look at the warrant, it's about a third, and a third. Right? It's a third of town administration, it's a third of zoning, and it's a third of citizen warrant articles. So you're adding a whole third of what they do to their job. And so that's where I think people who are on the board, people that work for town administration, people who work in planning, MPEDC, HDC, you name it, that's gonna be a big change for them. Because their process is going to change and who they're used to you know, the system they're used to. It's just a big change.
And the responsibility is going to radically change for each of those people. And that role.
Well, like last night, people were talking about planners, you know, not everybody is necessarily a planner, let's say. So that was one of the comments about the EC article they had, that anyone could run for that based on that article if it passed, but you know, people who are on the planning board, they're very specific about what they do. And I think that's really not what our select board has done at all historically. So
We
that
might
to
want
me is the
to-
biggest change about it.
Sorry. We might want to look at some other town councils and see how they do that, how Barnstable does it, or, you know, there are 10 or 12 of them out there. Through Collins, we might get a couple of models on how to handle that kind of thing, because obviously it works someplace.
I mean, I don't think there's any, we can look and I'll look. I don't think there's any discretion from state law. State law says that the legislative organ, which is in this, you know, if you change, it would be the town council. Here's these things after, you know, it's the body that makes the decision. So you submit it to them. They need to get information from the planning board, and then they can make their decision. So that's the way it would. So, I mean, it's as Mel said, it's kind of the same process you have now. You're just vesting that power in a different body. And then they can decide how they sort of structure it. Do they dedicate a whole meeting to it? And so if they have 2 meetings a month, one of the meetings is dedicated towards zoning, or do they make it a part of an existing? That's kind of at the discretion of the committee, but the process, I'm sorry, of the council, but the process of making the decision is articulated in state law.
But here's another question for you about it. So let's say somebody did go to the planning board, they want to change zoning, and the planning board gives them a negative recommendation. Can that end that process, or does it still the town council still has to take it up?
So we're veering into an area with sort of a lot of legal implications. What I would say, so I would say again, what I would say is my understanding is that there are implications on the council form of the planning board giving it a negative recommendation, but that doesn't preclude the town council. Well, I'll make this easier. If the planning board gives it a negative recommendation, if the planning board gives the proposal a negative recommendation, the town council could still adopt the zoning change. However, if they didn't adopt it and it had a negative recommendation, that has implications to the petitioner's appeal rights. But again, we're kind of going far afield of really what is important for the charter work, because the charter really is just.
Yeah, I hear you. I just think this is going to be what trips up everybody on the questions when this comes out and they talk about it. I really do. So
I had a question, Anthony, just clarification. I'm trying to understand process here. And I'm confused as to town council, where it fits in this. You go to the planning board, who in the new form of government will still be elected. They make a recommendation. Then it goes to the new town council for their decision.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Then it goes to the town council. So the ultimate arbitrator in this could be town council. Is that correct?
It
no,
is.
it's only going planning board to town council.
I'm sorry.
It's only going planning board to town council. You have some group in between.
Well, that's what I'm sorry, I'm a little confused on process. It goes planning board to town council.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the council.
That's it.
So then, Tom, there's never, if I'm hearing this right, there's never a point where the new government is making a zoning decision.
No, they're the only
They're
one
the-
making the zoning
Yeah.
decision.
Well, then, I'm sorry, we have.
Are
the
you talking about
planning
like
board,
town
we
legal
can't-
we got the
attorney
town
or
council,
town
and we
council?
got third, we got
Are you
the,
thinking town COUNSEL and COUNCIL?
yes.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry,
PC. Why don't we call it
sorry.
PC?
My mistake, I was thinking, sorry. You're correct.
Yeah, sorry.
Now I understand.
But
Yeah.
you know what? They will be intimately involved. Don't worry.
I'm sorry, I was.
No, it's okay.
So
I-
is
I-
there ever a,
I just don't think it's that, I don't see this as that big a deal.
Yeah, but being on the finance committee, we don't really deal with zoning. I mean,
The-
this is the most valuable land in the world. The most valuable, and everybody here,
2% of it left.
that's not true. If you rezone, you do create dirt. That's what the big lie about last night was. And that's what some people
Gated
want to
for some
do.
cliff out.
Exactly. That's why it's a real pressure point, I think, for you in that job. Because people are thinking that we're running out of dirt and they're gonna wanna rezone, and I think it's gonna get intense.
So is there a way that
I
the
don't-
council, like these exempt boards, like maybe Park and Rec doesn't, or the Water Commission or whatever? I'm still not even convinced we really should be talking about Water and Sewer Commission. I think those should remain as they are in our conversation of conversion, and if the town combines them, that's their role, but when it gets to zoning, is there like different councils who set up a zoning commission so that there's like another step in there somewhere? So it's not just falling on the town council so that they're bogged down with all this zoning. Is
I-
there a deferment that the council could make to the commission and then they would kind of operate the way the HDC will?
Well, that's kind of the planning board does.
Okay, but Pat, your hands up.
But they're just adding a layer, so it's off of the council's table. And then they make the decision, and if people want to appeal it, then it would go to the 9
Well, he
town
just said the
council.
state said they have to, the legislative body has to do it, and the town council's the legislative body. That's what I heard Anthony say.
Right, I'm just.
Yeah.
Is there a role that a commission could jump in here so that all the pressure isn't on the 9-member council?
But that's
Is
what the
there an
planning board
appeal
does. They're
route? Is
elected.
there-
Pat,
I don't have an answer to the last question. My hand's raised just, to add another spoon to stir the pot with. I just want you to understand that another method of making zoning law changes, and we've not worked on this section yet, would be under a citizen's petition where a certain number of signatures. No, you don't think it can go through the same? I mean, it's often an exemption under the petitions.
It's- I'm sorry, Pat, it's covered under,
okay.
it's covered under 40A. Where it talks about citizens. I'll just read this so that
Oh, great, thank you.
So there's a class of people that can submit a petition to modify the zoning. And again, we sort of beat this to death, but the town council, the zoning board of appeals, the planning board, individuals owning the land to be affected by the change, as well as registered voters of the town. You got to get 10 registered voters can submit a petition. I'll just go through the whole list. So 10 registered voters can sign a petition and they can propose a zoning image. The planning board, as we stated, the regional planning agency as well can submit a petition. And then in the you can by charter, in the charter, you can say, you can define other groups that can submit a petition. So other boards or commissions or things of that nature. But you can't make it harder. You can't make it 20 people need to sign the petition to submit a zoning proposal. The state law says you have to have 10.
And signatures.
It's like proposing a citizens warrant article now, but it goes to the council, so, yeah.
But still, the way, if people ask us, I want to make sure that we answer them correctly. And they would go to the planning board first and hope to get a positive recommendation.
all right,
I view it as the same process. They go, and I understand the pressure related to it. But it's also not dissimilar to a lot of other boards that put a lot of pressure on things, simply about that use on a regular basis.
I mean, I also hope that it's a change in process that ends up being, delivering more consistent opinions and judgments over time, as opposed to, Jill, the town meetings we've had where one year people get up and say, oh my God, if I don't get to subdivide my lot, my son will never be able to live on Nantucket, and everybody applauds and votes him into the subdivision. And then the next year, the same request gets made and everybody says, oh, density, we can't have so much density. And the family doesn't get the
Oh, no, I
the exact
agree.
same. So I would hope, well, I understand that the future town councilors are gonna be more on the spotlight.
That's why they get paid the big bucks.
It is gonna be big bucks.
Yeah, it's just a big change for them and a big change for people to understand that they're not gonna have like they're friends of the room like that, they can still do that. They can do that before a town council. You know, neighborhood wants to band together and fight some development, or they want to get together and change a development. I mean, a zone, like, they could do that. So I don't think it's so different in its outcome, but it will be a big change in thinking, because people here really understand zoning pretty well. And I think they understand that better than they understand other parts of the warrant, actually. I think they're really knowledgeable about land use on Nantucket. We have a really sophisticated citizenry on land use, I think. So I think this will be important to them.
Okay. Yes, Sue.
Suzanne Girardi. I just wanted a little clarification. What you said earlier, to get a home rule petition, we currently need 200 signatures or 15% of the voting population, whichever is less. Is that
No,
not
that's
what I
to
heard?
call a special town meeting.
That's just to call it a
Yeah,
special
home
town
rule
meeting.
home rule petition would just go onto the special town meeting, be it as an article.
But then there was talk that it would become a simple majority vote. If we went to a special
Yeah,
town
yes,
meeting, then it's only simple majority vote to.
No,
Yeah,
Please.
no, whether it's a special town meeting or the annual town meeting, the article that this whole process is trying to put in place in front of the voters only requires a simple majority voted, and it's not a 2/3 vote
Okay,
kind of
That's-
article.
For the charter.
Like
change.
zoning article.
thank you. And then the second part of that is, under the town council form of government, what is the process to do the same? If people wanted to overturn anything that the town council did, what would be the process? Are the percentages the same again? 200 signatures can allow you to bring it forward to try to,
That's a good question.
Yeah, those details, I don't know the answers to. I know that,
The easy answer to this question is that's a section that we have yet to discuss for, I want to say it's Article 6, Article 7 in the work plan.
okay,
It's one of those two.
thank you.
But I know we've discussed kind of tangentially, obviously it means to petition the commission for action, but also the ability, if you disagree with the decision of the council, that there's an ability for citizens to essentially appeal that through signature collection and, providing grounds for that appeal, to then file that with the council and to have that appeal.
Can I just follow up? My request would be that is unattainable. If you want people to give up their vote and go to a town council, that means of having some recourse needs to seem attainable, reasonably, instead of, this seems attainable to me, getting 200 signatures. I think that's really a low bar in my mind of voters. But if it becomes 1,000 signatures, that becomes a lot greater and might not be attainable for people that have serious concerns about something.
I think the 200 signatures allows you to call a special town meeting to discuss
Right,
the concern.
right.
I think that's in the ordinance someplace.
and I would actually just throw in there, again, one man's opinion. I don't think that this, you're giving up your vote. I mean,
But
I know that it's different. You're end up voting for
you vote once.
nine people that are really your proxy, but, if those people don't do what the voters want them to do, they get voted out of office, and other
Yeah,
people get
but-
voted out.
But we currently have a say on each article that comes up. And if you move to town council, you no longer have a direct vote to have an impact. You can speak. Just as I appreciate that you're allowing me to speak, but you're allowing me to speak here. I don't have a seat at the table. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
little different as far as,
I hear you, but I've also been sort of thinking about this in the sense that that's true. It's not, you don't get to sit in the auditorium and be part of this group discussion, but most people don't speak it, there are a handful of people that speak on most articles, in town meeting. And when you have 9 counselors that are in effect the legislature, They're gonna have office hours. They have to have time open to speak to their constituents, so they have to be accessible. I think that,
Does that mean they'd be full-time? And because that, I think that's something that we've sort of hit a roadblock in our former meetings. I mean, because I can tell you, working a full-time job and doing select board and not being even legislative body is not really possible. So unless it's my full-time job or whoever counselor, it's not reasonable. I agree, there should be office hours and all that, but that is a conversation that I think the committee seriously needs to have about who is gonna run for these seats, what the representation will be, who is able to, I mean, if it's not full-time, it's gonna preclude anybody with little kids. Anybody who works at night or whatever, all those things need to be talked about. Carolyn, I interrupted your hand.
But I absolutely agree with you, and I think we have to take those things very seriously, and I think it's important not even to give the impression of not taking it seriously. And when people say it will take XYZ to convince us to give up our vote, we really need to validate that, because the simple act of casting the vote and being able to take some action, yes or no, on something, even if no one knows what you voted on and you didn't speak at all, is extraordinarily important, and that is what we're talking about changing. So I would really urge all of us to validate that that is a distinct change that we're making. And also, we're doing something in a different way that gives a different kind of access, but it's not a replacement one for one.
I might, and I agree, I really appreciate what you're saying. One of the things that I think would be nice for people, as someone who, I do go to a lot of select board meetings and I watch a lot of select board meetings. I like the public engagement part of that, and it's a smaller room and there are fewer people, and I think it's a little less intimidating actually. And it's, if you're on the agenda, let's say, you get to have that interaction with them. You're gonna get feedback from them. You know, you don't just have to use public comment, where they're not allowed to respond to that in that meeting, right? But I actually think appealing to 9 people instead of 1,200 might be a more enjoyable process. It's possible.
Yeah, no, it's possible. I just think principally, it's a huge leap for people, myself included, especially when I'm at an age where I feel I now have time to be much more civically minded to impact the community in a way that I didn't have that availability when I had children that were my priority. And so I just think I'm not alone in my thought process on that, and I know that, and I think last night's special town meeting demonstrated that people do not always follow what the committees that might be more knowledgeable about the details, they don't always agree. And because they don't feel confident or comfortable enough to stand up there and speak in front of everybody, their voice often goes unheard. But when they do vote, like you said, Carolyn,
That's their voice.
that is our voice. We are casting our vote for what we believe in. And for maybe a lot of people, the town meeting last night wasn't the way they wanted it. And then for others, it was exactly what they wanted. So, you know, I mean, the people are speaking with their votes.
well,
Absolutely.
7% of the people are speaking.
Correct, but that is still we still have a higher number of percentage of voters that participate in town meeting than they do off island. I have a friend that lives in Barnstable, Osterville. They went to a town council, they hate it. Her friends and group of friends do not like it. So it's just, it's not right or wrong. It's just,
That's true.
where are we at? And I think if people get the sense that they're having things forced upon them, they're going to resist. Because, you know, I don't think that's a good sell, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, I think you're doing an incredible amount of work and putting in a lot of time and thought. But it shouldn't be a sell either, you know, it should be, people want to come to the table and vote that way. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that feeds into what we said about having more of our grass.
I don't know, Donna, you first and then Anthony.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond. I do respect your concerns because that is something that we do take into account as a committee. But I think it's a whole thing, whether it's select board or town council or whatever form of government. We're just trying to do the best with what we have and what we think will be the best. And ultimately, it is going to be the will of the voters if we get that far. So if the majority want a town council, then it would be the will of the majority of folks. And if they don't, if most of them feel like you do, then it won't happen. It's not going to be imposed on someone. It's going to be an elective process.
Thank you, Donna. Anthony?
You're
did you have a
welcome.
comment?
I was just gonna sort of add to, if this question comes up, I was gonna add to what Jeff said. This is a conversation that happens quite often, and there's a whole section dedicated to citizen participation. And Pat has already created sort of a menu of a la carte items, everything from allowing citizens to put things on the agenda for the council, to referendum, to overturn things that the council has done, to other procedures for having individuals or groups come and talk to the council or be heard. And really, that's a place where this committee can take that public input and think about what are the petition requirements, what are the timeframes to make that easier, or I don't want to say harder, but to see what they're going to require from the community in order to exercise those various options. So I think that's one of the places where you haven't done it yet, and where the public input and where they're saying they want to be heard, or where people are saying they want to be heard, you're going to use that input to sort of build out that section. And Pat, I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that. Like, I know you've done a lot on there. Oh, she said no. So I just want to add that.
I agree with Anthony. We will absolutely get to that.
All righty. Anything else that on people's minds? No?
Good luck. Tonight.
Yeah. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody on Zoom, thanks so much. Good to see you all. See you in 2 weeks.
Be well.